If you have a career, then you have stories to tell, and I want to hear them. Welcome to this episode of CTRL ALT STORY, a podcast where I go through the career journeys of people who work in and with technology, dive into career advice, and share some fun stories along the way. My guest today is Randy Carroll. He's a human resources manager at Olin Chemical Company. He's an HR professional, continuous learner, and considered a top HR leader to follow according to Nectar. I'm not 100% sure what that is. I saw it on his LinkedIn, so we'll find out a little bit more about what that is. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he's been in the HR game for over 20 years, which is fantastic. And the last thing I'll say in the intro is that I think he likes Georgia football. We may or may not hold that against him, but, hopefully he doesn't bark at me during this conversation. So happy to have you here, man.
Yeah, happy to be here. And I promise you I will not bark during this conversation.
I appreciate that. If you want to let out a Roll Tide or something, that's fine, but, no barking.
No, there will not be any Roll Tiding going on this side.
That is completely fair. To kick things off, like I said, human resources manager for Olin Chemical Company. So just want to hear about that, kind of what you do currently and a little bit about Olin Chemical as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a job I started at the end of April. And prior to doing that, I was doing some consulting and saw this opportunity and kind of looked into it. And if you're not familiar with Olin, very interesting company, a lot of base chemicals. So think of like bleaches and caustic materials, chlorine, hydrogen as a byproduct. And the company as a whole is massive. I mean, it's an international company. So you've got chemicals division that I work in. You've got an epoxy division. And then you have what most people would actually know, a brand name that more familiar with, Winchester. So Winchester Ammunition. So that's kind of the company as a whole. My happy little plant is in Charleston, Tennessee. I drive there every day, a very far commute, but I don't mind it because I have great working hours. And I get to support about 200 people in all things related to HR. So some days that could look like helping out with training and giving that a voice for safety awards and doing something more humbling like serving food. Or it could be somebody has a very personal issue or illness or situation in work, and they need help strategically navigating that. Or speaking of strategic, it could be, what does our hiring forecast look like for the next 18 months? And how can we best go about planning for success and stability in the company and our operation? So every single day is different when you work in the world of HR, especially in chemical manufacturing and in a plant type environment.
And I know that you've worked for several different companies. We actually know each other because there was a time where we both worked at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. So do you care to kind of take us through your career journey? So I guess that's kind of a two-part question. So one part is, how did you find yourself in HR to begin with? And then also kind of your different, companies you work for, different roles.
Yeah, and I'll try not to be too long-winded, Josh, because this is a long story. So I'm going to tell you what I call the two truths of how I got into HR. I have one story that I share with my friends and one story I normally share at work. I'm going to tell both of them to you. So I was working at UPS. By this time, I am 19 years old. I'm a production supervisor for UPS. I've got about 19, 20 people reporting to me. I do that at night. And during the day, I go to school at MTSU, Middle Tennessee State University. And I am very frustrated because it is a rough, tough environment, and I have a lot of turnover. So as a rough, tough production supervisor, I go to HR and I tell the HR group, hey, listen, you all are doing a terrible job hiring. You got to get better people. And I'm basically ripping them a new one. And they said, if you're so great, why don't you come over to HR and do it yourself? And so it started this bickering back and forth. And I was starting the beginning of my junior year in college. At the same time, I go to my first round of classes, first day of classes, and I'm not enjoying it. At this point, I was a business major. I pivoted from being an education major, and I'm meandering through campus, and I see this girl named Brittany that I had a huge crush on in 10th grade, but she transferred out of my high school. So I followed Brittany to her class, saw what class she took, and I went and switched my major so I could get in the class. I know this sounds crazy.
This is either the smooth. This is like the smoothest move or like the worst move. I can't tell which one.
Yeah, I don't even know if I've shared the story with my wife, which is pretty bad. But so spoiler alert, Brittany's not my wife. And I end up in the class. I transfer. I get in the class the next day, and I sit beside her, and I go, "Hey, wait, are you Brittany from my Spanish class in 10th grade?" And we end up dating for a couple months. And it just fizzles out. It doesn't work, but I love the classes. And so I have to give a lot of credit to Brittany because switching my major was the catalyst to getting into the world of HR, because I became an industrial organizational psychology major. It was a psychology class. And that is kind of like a lot of people relate that to business psychology or HR. So IO psychology is what most people call it for short. It became a major, and then I parlayed that into actually going into HR and trying to prove that HR group wrong at UPS. And what went in as a bull in a china shop kind of guy, where I'm going to show them how much better I am than they are. About 48 hours later, I was going back to those same people and saying, "Man, I'm really sorry. I had no idea what you dealt with." It was one of the most humbling experiences I've had. And it fundamentally changed me as a person and how I viewed people and their jobs and what went with someone doing what they do in their career path. So very happy that I saw Brittany on campus and very happy for those elements that caused that change. So fast forward a little bit of time, met the lady who became my wife, and graduated from MTSU. At this point, we're still not married, but my wife decided she wanted to move back to Georgia, where she's from. I kind of married into people from Georgia. And so we moved to the Atlanta area, and UPS would not give me a transfer. So I joined a family-owned trucking company called Watkins Motor Line, still in the logistics, transportation area. But that was short-lived because they were instantly bought out by Fedex the moment I started. So I went from UPS to FedEx, and I navigated through that. As I was doing so, the economy started to turn down. And that's as we're getting closer to the 2008 housing crisis. So I saw that coming. And at the same time period, and I've been very lucky in my career, Josh, I had a phone call from a guy that I helped place years ago at UPS, and he'd moved up in his career in that time period. And now he's working in state government, and he positions me. He says, "Hey, would you be interested in becoming the understudy to someday being the HR director for K through 12 education for the state of Tennessee?" Now, that's my original major. I love education still. So I say yes. And I moved back to Tennessee with my wife, and back with my family, who's originally from Tennessee. And I'm working in downtown Nashville every day. And that 3 to 5 year time period of understudy learning became 3 months. He got sick, took early retirement, and I became the HR director. So here you are, about 25 years old, and you're in charge of HR for K through 12 education in Tennessee. And it was a big responsibility. And I absolutely loved every minute of it because I felt like I made a big difference. So did that as long as I was able to. That's a political appointment position. So I served through 2 governor's terms, and then had to find a next opportunity, and was lucky enough to land at Publix. With Publix, I was in charge of employee relations for Tennessee and portions of Georgia and Alabama. And in that role, had some very, very, very interesting cases. But on the flip side, in the world of HR, I learned some of the best practices. They're considered one of the top companies to work for, and have since the inception of Fortune. I think it's Fortune's list that tracks that. And so I really learned some real strong principles and practices about culture. And I think that's where that became very important to me. But do have some great stories from there. So did that as long as I could, and started my MBA, was finalizing my MBA. And people that I was kind of coaching and mentoring who started their HR career later than me were getting their MBA in East Tennessee. It was virtual. And they said, hey, where should I go work? And I did some homework for them and looked, and TVA looked like a great employer. So they go to TVA, they tell me about it, and then they talk me into joining them. So I end up at TVA. It was a wonderful move for me and my family because it's between both of our families, my wife's family and my family. Got to do some incredible things. You know, they're, for lack of better terms, quasi-government agency. So you're looking at nuclear power and power production, but also impacting the economics of the area, the footprint that they cover, while also having that aspect of government. So very unique look and processes and way to interpret HR policies and rules and guidelines. Did that for a while till I had a leadership opportunity at another company called Mueller Water Products. And that's when I got into what a lot of people call regular manufacturing. Fun process, fun times. They make water hydrants or fire hydrants. So little guys like this right here. And did that for a while and went from Mueller to Publix. And the move back to Publix was very, very personal, but I don't mind sharing. One of the principles I have in the world of HR is people want and probably need to do a job for both professional and personal reasons. So the personal driver for me to go back to Publix was an opportunity to be close to a grandfather who's extremely close to me. That job allowed me to live within 20 miles of him and spend end of life with him as he had a terminal illness. So that was the move. A lot of people ask me, you know, why did you return back to a job that you used to have? And that was why. And it's a wonderful company. So did that for as long as I could. And then shortly after, I spent a short stint with a company called Environmental Solutions Group. It's kind of like a holding company that's umbrellaed under a bigger conglomerate company. Did a lot of consulting. That's where I kind of learned how to work with different businesses and do consulting. And then that parlayed into me meeting individuals at Blue Cross and end up at Blue Cross where we work together. So worked at Blue Cross.
And for the record, we cross paths at Blue Cross, but never in a negative HR way.
Yes.
As far as I remember, I will just throw that out there. I was never called into HR.
Yes. And I'll tell you, a lot of people that talk about HR talk about the good side and the bad side, or the happy side and the not so happy side. I was on the happy side. I was in the business of giving jobs and expanding things. So, the only thing I would have ever called on you for is congratulations on a promotion. So you're good there. And after Blue Cross, I did some more consulting before I ended up where I'm at with Olin. Long story, like I said, but that's why I'm here.
No, that's a great career. I mean, it's kind of interesting because you have this constant, which is HR, but then you have all these different, chemical, grocery store, healthcare, all these different things. So when I think about that, like, I'm kind of curious as you went from company to company, still working in HR, obviously things are a little different, but different types of company, what is there like a constant there? Like you're like, okay, well, HR is HR is HR, or is it kind of like, each one's its own animal entirely depending on the actual company?
That is a wonderful question. So in addition to what you just asked, a lot of people ask me, was that by design or did you kind of fall into that? I have a lot of interest and I like to know how things work. And so that's a lot of the driving reasons to get into these different companies. A lot of the ones I worked at, the one constant I saw at many of them was strong, solid cultures. But in terms of the world of HR, is it the same at each place? No, it's vastly different. The things that are somewhat constant, things that I wouldn't say standardized, but as close as you can get to standardized, is benefits. Benefits are kind of synonymous with every job that you have in America. They do vary on the offerings levels and co-payments and things like that, but benefits are about standard. The rest of it's vastly different. The HR issues you're dealing with in government are incredibly different than you would have in grocery or retail, as some people would say. Very different than what I'm experiencing in my current company. Even what you would call manufacturing is very different. The manufacturing at Mueller, where it's a product that you're manufacturing, it's production of a piece versus creating a chemical, completely different. Now, some of the base things are the same, like people want to feel valued and needed and respected. Those are all the same.
That makes sense. So I have a lot of questions that I've written down that I want to make sure I ask. The one that, and I think we kind of talked about this a little bit before, is I love anytime I get a chance to hear, just some kind of hilarious, crazy HR story. I know, in a lot of your career, you've been on the positive side of HR, telling people about promotions or, talent acquisition, things like that. But, any stories you have that you feel appropriate to share. Obviously, we don't have to say names or anything like that. But, I would just love to hear any just hilarious stories. I'm sure anyone listening would enjoy that too.
Yeah. So I'll give you two that I would consider more on the PG rated side, because several of the stories that I get into would probably not be PG. They'd probably be PG-13, if not R rated. So we'll avoid those today. And you said I'm on the happy side or good side. At one point, I was known as the Grim Reaper. I mean, if I showed up, people thought they were losing their job. So there is a scary side of HR for some.
Did you have a costume or anything like that, or?
Truth be told, I didn't tell anybody this, Josh, but one of the things I would do, I would wear, and this is back when I had to wear a full suit to work every day. I would wear a red tie anytime that I had to terminate somebody. And then one day somebody figured it out, because they were like, "Hey, did you know that you always have a red tie on whenever somebody's losing their jobs?" And so I immediately had to start switching the ties up, because that was true. I was doing it. I just wasn't telling anybody. I wanted to kind of have a signature, I guess. And
so is that something like Tiger Woods wearing the red shirt on Sunday energy going on? Yeah.
That's actually where I got it from. Yeah. I was watching the Masters and I was like, "Hey, he wears red on Sunday. I should probably wear a tie a red tie whenever I go to terminate people." That's actually where it came from. Good guess.
Yeah, I just, that was just a guess. I'm not a golfer. I'm awful. I was at Top Golf last night. I was awful, but I can appreciate the red shirt.
Yeah.
But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your story. I know you had some stories.
No, you're good. You're good. So two stories. One, it's borderline sad, but also funny. So there's this employee appreciation event that we used to do at a particular facility I worked at every year. And this appreciation event was a massive cookout where we really went all out for employees to let them know they're valued. Perfect thing that you want in the world of HR. Just positive accolades all around. And during that process, we used to give away prizes. We had what we would call like tier 1 table, tier 2, tier 3. And if your name was called, it was a raffle. If your name was called early in the process, oh, awesome. You get first pick. You get tier 1 until all the products were gone. So tier 1 might be a big screen TV, like I don't even mean a 30-something inch. I'm talking 55 and up TV, passes to Dollywood or Six Flags or the Georgia Aquarium for the season, maybe Braves games, maybe a weekend away somewhere. So that's table 1. Table 2 would probably be like a 45-inch TV or a little bit less, a gaming system. Maybe tickets to the Lookouts, Chattanooga Lookouts versus the Atlanta Braves. And then from there it goes down. Maybe the last table is a rice cooker and a toaster and a smaller TV and knick-knack type things. So that's our prize table. And we had let an administrative assistant order all these prizes. She's given a budget, go get all the gifts and all the prizes. And as it got started, I walked around, didn't pay a lot of attention to table 3 because table 1's where the action is. That's, you want to see where the big items go. So the very first guy that we called, he looked around, he walked up, and this is in front of the entire plant. So he's walking up and down. He's looking at the tables. And he bypasses table 1. He's looking at table 2. Bypasses that also. He looks at table 3 and his eyes lit up. And he gets so excited. And he reaches down for this box and he picks it up and he puts it up and he's like so excited. Why is this guy so excited for an item from table 3? And I couldn't figure it out. So I walked by and I'm looking, and it's a box about this big. I can't really see what it is. He sits down and he's talking to his buddies. And I walk over and look and I said, "What did you get?" And he said, "Oh, I got a water filtration device. I'm going to have filtered water in my house. My wife has really been wanting one of these. She wants us to drink cleaner water. She's going to be thrilled that I got this for her. She's been wanting one for so long." And I looked and I went to the admin assistant. I said, "Why would you order water filtration devices?" She said, "I didn't order that." She said, "Now, as a joke, I put a bidet attachment on the third table." I said, "Wait a minute, what?" And then I looked over and other people at the table are looking at him and looking at the box and they're explaining to him what a bidet actually is because he didn't know. And I can see that look come over his face of dread. No. And he's like, "Oh God, I gave up a big screen TV for a bidet attachment." And
I mean, that's the gift that keeps on giving. So
yeah. I mean, he could save thousands on toilet paper, but I mean, we died laughing about that. And at the end of the day, it actually became an HR issue because he was so embarrassed that we had to work on trying to get a different prize for him. But getting confused between a bidet attachment and a water filtration device was a pretty good one.
Yeah, I don't think you want to drink that water.
No, I would not. I would not drink that water. So another time, and you'll be able to guess very quickly where this employer was, but I used to have a big territory. I traveled a lot within my territory. And when a new store opened, I would go to that location. And we're usually debuting things and doing community involvement events. I, as the HR person, would bring in the CEO or somebody from the executive team to ribbon cut, open a new location. It's just one of those extracurricular non-HR things that you got stuck with. So there's a new facility opening, and I helped do staffing. I normally am doing investigations and employee relations, but this time I helped with staffing because we had so many new locations opening. And I helped this new bakery clerk, and she's sampling out cake. And she gave me a slice of cake. She's like, "Hey, try the new cake that we're debuting. And we're very proud of our new store and the grand opening, and hurrah, hurrah, all smiles and lollipops and everybody's happy." So I drive 120 miles back to my store where my office is. And I go into my office and I have like 3 voicemails. And I was like, that's kind of strange. So I sit down and the first voicemail, I hear somebody like fidgeting with the phone, kind of breathing in it, and then they hang up. I'm like, okay, and I just delete it. I thought maybe it's the wrong number. The next voicemail comes on, and I hear, "Hello, Mr. Carroll," and it's a soft-spoken woman, and she's saying, "I don't really know how to say this, but you ate my cake, and I hope it was moist enough, and if you ever want to come like down and me bake for you outside of work, I would like to make you a cake and maybe you come by." And then she hurries up and hangs up the phone. And then the third one is calling and leaving a number. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, the bakery lady thought that I was hitting on her because I sampled the cake. And so I had to go to her store and say, "Hey, look, that's kind of inappropriate to like call me and talk about the cake and like how I like the cake and how you want to proposition to make me a cake outside of work." And I'm kind of PG in this a little bit because it was a little worse than that, Josh. But she turned red face and I know I was red. I was Roll Tide red, if you want to hear that.
There you go.
But I was that red as I'm having that discussion. And sadly, she ended up quitting like a week later out of embarrassment. But my boss thought that was really funny that somebody would try to hit on the HR guy.
I mean, if the cake is really good, I mean, I don't know. It's like all these HR stories. It's like you keep going back to these women. I don't know. There's some kind of connection. I'm just kidding. I do want to pivot just a little bit, but so
yeah.
a lot of times on this podcast, we kind of talk about technology, different things like that. So, I think there's some great tie-ins here for you. So I'm just curious, how has technology kind of changed in the HR space and evolved over your 20 something year journey? Because I'm not saying you went from chisel and rock to what we have today, but I'm just kind of curious what that transition's been like.
No, I'm so glad you asked that, Josh, because it's something I'm living through now, but it's something I've actually, ever since you asked me to be on here, I was thinking about, and I kept thinking, where did it start? And I had a flashback the other night. I can remember faxing information into a district office, and I can remember there used to be a service that people used to pay into where you wanted to get your resume seen. You would send money into this group, and they would basically have a list of fax numbers, and they would fax your resume to all these different fax numbers. And so it'd be coming in, it's almost like spam mail. It'd come in unsolicited. All of a sudden, the fax machine in the corner would light up, and here comes a printed out resume. And I'm thinking, okay, well, who is this?
And it's not tied to an actual application. It's just like a blind, right. Here's a resume.
Blind resume. So that's your 90s spamming that somehow lasted into the 2000s. But yeah, I used to see those come in, and once in a blue moon, you'd see a pretty good resume come in, and you're calling them and trying to find out how they found out about the job. And that's really kind of where it started. And you had fax machines, and you had interoffice mail that you're putting things in and sealing it up and sending the hard paper. Very little was sent via email. Very little was processed. There really wasn't an HRS system. It was like a DOS-based screen, and you're punching in to certain lines to get the information in and hope that it's housed in the right way. So we started with that, and then it probably wasn't until the 2010 timeframe where now you're talking about the introduction to PeopleSoft technology and using things like Taleo. I know 2010 sounds late, but it was around 09 to 010 that I started seeing most of that, the introduction to that. And so now you're getting into better tracking in terms of your recruitment processes and your employee records and employee files. And you're still splitting that line between a hard paper file and an electronic file, and what goes in what. And retention is important, but how little can we retain, which is my preference. So you go from that to what we had at Blue Cross, and you're talking about Workday and some of those more sophisticated, all-encompassing ERP systems where we speak the same language because we're all using the same system. And that's nice. And now where I'm at, this is mostly because in the world of manufacturing and production, HR brings in no revenue. It's not the basis of what we do. We're used to producing a chemical or producing a product. So it's not that it's secondhand, it's just not priority. So we're not to Workday, and I'm back to using PeopleSoft again. So it's interesting to see that ebb and flow of what technologies are used, or what I would say, Josh, is the lack thereof. So I'm in a very fortunate position right now because I can see those opportunities that I caught a glimpse of in my prior job on where we could utilize technology. And if we want to get into the discussion, maybe GTP or maybe AI or whatever you want to put that label on of the emerging technologies that HR has not yet fully grasped.
Yeah, and it was something I'm curious about. I kind of stumbled. I was about to go in a different direction, then my brain pivoted. So I'm just curious. I know you went from PeopleSoft, and I saw that transition. Obviously not the same ways you did at Blue Cross, but going from PeopleSoft to Workday back to PeopleSoft. So I'm just curious: is the PeopleSoft experience, is it pretty much the same as what you had before, or is it like a more of an updated version of PeopleSoft that's a little more closer to Workday? Or
exactly the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it's things that like used to be 1 or 2 clicks are very fast for me that I got accustomed to in Workday. They tend to be more clicks and slower process in PeopleSoft. Little clunkier. Same basic functions, just slower and less smooth. It's probably the way I'd say it.
And do you feel like LinkedIn is, like I feel like in this day and age, as far as like recruitment and finding talent, I mean, do you feel like LinkedIn is like the ultimate way to go? Is that where most people are finding their talent these days? Or do you think it's more they're putting in their job, hope, in the application, hoping for the best? I mean, I'm just curious to kind of what your experience has been like there.
Man, that is a loaded question. It is all over the board. We saw, in the early 2000s, we saw the dominance, pure dominance of Monster and Career Builder. And so Career Builder did a decent job of pivoting and attaching itself to a lot of the newspapers. So a newspaper comes out, has jobs, and those parlay into Career Builder. And then we saw not necessarily the death, but almost death of those two individuals, as you see the Indeeds and the ZipRecruiters and the LinkedIns of the world kind of take dominance. And there are a lot of others out there, but the big two, in my opinion, are Indeed and LinkedIn. And the difference there is the type of job that you're looking for. I will fully admit, though, I am biased. I prefer LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I love its functionality. I love what it does on both the recruiter side and the recruitment side. So the opportunity to sponsor a job and know that it's higher in the queue of somebody searching, doing your words correctly so they appear in a job search. It's just very user friendly, in my opinion, for the outcome that you want. The outcome is the marriage between the recruitment or the employer and the potential employee. Now, on the flip side, there are a lot of people that are hoping to land the job just straight from applying. And a lot of them may not realize if you go to LinkedIn and you see a job for an employer and you like it, and you click that link that transfers you into their system to apply, whether it's Taleo or a Workday or any of the other Greenhouse, any of the others, you're actually in the system. You're not bypassing anything by getting out of LinkedIn and going straight to their career page. You're following the same pathway. And some people don't know that. So
and do you feel like, and do you feel like in the industry that you're in now that you maybe don't find quite as many people on LinkedIn because maybe the people that are in that like a manufacturing field, but that maybe they're just not on LinkedIn. Maybe they're not social media people per se. Obviously if you're in, like you were recruiting for more of like a technology, like a software company or something like that. Do you feel like there's kind of depending on the company, there's people you may or may not even be able to find on LinkedIn?
Definitely. And there's a big division too, Josh, between hourly and salary type roles. So a lot of what you're looking for in hourly recruitment, you're going to get better results on Indeed. And when it comes to different career fields too, if I'm looking for tech, I might look at LinkedIn, and then I might go into some of the niche sites that may also focus on technology. Then when I'm looking for engineers, I may stay on LinkedIn. It depends on the type of engineer. Sometimes I'm even going as far though and digging into kind of like the rabbit hole of looking at alumni sites. There's a lot of really good, Penn State's a good example. They have a huge alumni network. A lot of good talent comes from that university. And if you can connect in with people from that alumni network, that's a good opportunity to help you find talent. Some of it's through just networking.
Right. I think networking plays a huge role. I mean, I know it's not always the easiest to do, but I mean, I know just for my current career, if it hadn't been for networking, there's no way I'd be where I'm at, just knowing the right people at the right time. And I personally think LinkedIn's a great platform for that, but also just kind of putting yourself out there, right? I mean, I know that a couple of months ago, we were both at an event here at a local college and, talking to people, meeting, it's like you never know what's going to come from just kind of putting yourself out there, meeting people in person, letting them see in our case, let them see our bald heads,
Yeah. And Josh, honestly, that's my favorite thing to do. I mean, I really worry about young talent coming out of college and not being prepared for opportunities. So yes, I like it for the networking and discovering new talent. And hey, maybe I'll need those individuals and their expertise for jobs down the road. But more than that, I really hate to see those individuals coming out of college and going, well, what do I do now? And for a long period of time, I saw that. So I know you mentioned us and being at that event, but that's why I do those things, because that's a passion project for me. And I've been fortunate to see some of those individuals years ago that I mentored or talked to, and now I'm following them on LinkedIn. I'm going, oh, they just got another promotion. Now they're at the same level as me. That's awesome. Being really proud of those individuals.
Yeah, and I will take a moment just say, thank you for kind of putting that together, letting me join in on that event. That was I enjoyed doing that, talking to people about AI from an HR perspective. That was a lot of fun for me. So the kind of going back to what we were talking about a minute ago, finding applicants, going through the different websites, different things. I just kind of want to pick your brain on a couple of things there. So if someone is, looking for a job, and they have their resume, they have whatever it is, what can that person do, in your opinion, to kind of stand out amongst the other candidates for, especially if it's like a tough, position, not like entry level?
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to take a deep breath and sigh, because that's tough in the world of quickness. And what I mean by that is our ability to database our resumes and quickly drop it into an application and be able to apply. I mean, some people are out here applying to 50 to 100 jobs a day. So when that occurs, you're going to have 100 people in a row, and you might be 101 because you took the time to rewrite your resume to try to stand out, but time was not on your side. So you're way down in the queue. If it's somebody like a Blue Cross, where we got 50 to 70,000 applicants a year, we might not even see it, because out of the top 100, we had so many good candidates. We're just not looking at the rest of them. We might not look at every single person. Not every employer has that problem. Some might get 30 and they're going, okay, well, I'm looking at all 30 because it's not 500. The way to stand out is, I hate to say tried and true basics, but a lot of people miss it, man. Don't submit it as a Word document. That's like cardinal rule 101. When you submit as a Word document, a lot of times, and I'm speaking about your resume, but a lot of times that formatting gets off and everything looks a little wonky. Always submit as a PDF, and please don't submit it as resume 1, resume 2, whatever it might be. My favorite is just your first name _ last name and your PDF document, because then I can relate your name just seeing that line item if I drop it into my own document. Sometimes I'll have a way that I organize files for a job. Let's say I'm recruiting for a role. I might drop you into a file, and I can quickly do name association by seeing that file name. So I think little nuances like that give you an advantage. I would also say there's no need in this day and age. I think you're remote, Josh. So
correct.
I was remote for years. Then this day and age, addresses really don't matter. So why would you let somebody unintentionally discriminate against you by saying, oh, look, they live, an hour away from work. They're going to have a long commute. Don't do that. Leave that address out. That's not really needed. Those are simple.
And that gives you a little extra space, especially if you're trying to fit all on one page. That gives you a little extra space to work with.
Yeah. Those are big ones. Very traditional formats are a little bit easier on the eyes. I tell people often it needs to be like a kind of like a commercial. The reason we love to go out to eat is maybe we saw that on a commercial. Fast food is not that appealing if you go and get it and look at it. But those Taco Bell commercials make it look a lot better on the commercial. And that's kind of how resumes need to be. Visually appealing, where we go, oh, this looks nice and neat and concise, visually appealing. So that's missed sometimes. People want to include so much information that they try to just jam things in there. And that's probably not always the best. Also, I'll tell you from somebody that has 20 years experience, I'm just now to 2 pages on my resume. So we don't need to have a litany of 5 or 6, 7 pages that some people have. The last thing I'd tell you, Josh, when I talk about people cramming stuff in there, a lot of times they think that the reason to get all that information in there is because we have these magical bots that are looking at resumes and they're categorizing and they're saying, okay, well, this person is a 99% match, so you should call them. And other times that AI bot has automatically dispositioned them. Now, I will say this. It's true. we do have technology to scan resumes and actually give a percentage match on how well that person fits a job. That technology exists.
And is that based, I guess, based on like keywords and certain keywords you have set?
Yeah. And very few companies, though, are actually using it, even though they have access to it. I've had access to that type of technology for years now, and I've often proved it wrong because it's doing a 1-for-1. If you have this word, there's that word. There's even people that try to game that. You'll look at their resume and think, oh, there's an extra blank page here. Not an extra blank page, because they're 100% matched to the job. What they've done is whited out the words. So they've copy and pasted the job description as a blank piece of paper in their resume. And it's doing a word match on words that you can't see to make them 100% match. So there's people that have tried to game systems. And on this side of the fence in HR, that's why we kind of dispelled the utilization of AI in some instances to go, it's not accurate. It's not doing what I need it to do in terms of matching individuals. I just threw a lot at you about that.
No, that's good. I mean, obviously, you know, if the technology, you know, so I'm sure there are companies out there who probably are figuring it out. It may not be rolled out to the masses. I mean, I know with large language models and their ability to kind of understand tech, but not because I think that's the big difference there. You know, you have essentially your let's match this word to this word versus let's match the context or the sentiment of what this is trying to say. I mean, and that's something that I see as part of my job. You know, so part of what we're doing with virtual assistants that are AI powered and things like that. So of course that's where kind of my wheels are spinning, going, you know, how can we use that? You know, obviously there are going to be problems. And I think we've talked about this before in person. You know, it's like how would we make that work, but also still have the human intervention when it's needed, and, you know, not be fully dependent on generative AI to do it. But yeah, so obviously I'm trying not to get distracted, but my wheels are spinning. I'm trying to solution it, but
yeah. Well, you don't have to solution it today, but I do like talking to you about it because you have an aspect of it that you see that greatly helps me. You know, I like to look down the road, but I think I've told you before, I don't know enough about those types of things to make a difference in that world. And it's really, in my opinion, a gap in the world of HR. We're trying to be more technologically innovative. We want to be more technologically innovative. We have a barrier to it because we're not priority in terms of technology that I mentioned earlier. But we know it would help our jobs. And a lot of us don't have that skill set. We're HR people. We're accustomed to customer service and engaging and working on things that affect people, not things that always make our jobs better. So we love to be handcuffed, or at least I do, to IT people and data analytic people because they make us better at what we do.
Yeah, I think we talked before, I mentioned this, but I kind of want to go into it just a little bit. So I don't want to focus too much. I'm not here to talk about product, but I do want to mention a little bit of a product that IBM has called watsonx Orchestrate. So just for anyone listening, kind of tying this to the HR conversation. So because this is a product that can do a lot of different things. It's not an HR piece of software, but that is one of the leading use cases for it. And the idea for it is that you're taking all your different HR systems. So let's say it's Workday, and you'd have to help me all the different, you know, we're essentially where you're getting your people, you know, your people from, where, you know, all these different things, your email, everything is integrated through this one interface. And you can, instead of hopping from application to application, screen to screen, you're able to, you know, from an automation perspective, do things from all those, you know, find candidates from here, now send out emails to those people. These are the top people that now brought that data back in HR. Oh, here's go schedule those interviews for me. You know, there's this whole thing. And, you know, when I think of that, I think of, you know, from the HR, you know, people in HR, they're like, well, I'm not a technology person, but something like this is like, well, you're putting the mundane, boring stuff in the hands of HR, not the stuff that still needs the human, you know, so you're getting more time, you know, like something you would have spent 4 hours doing, it took 5 minutes. Well, now you have 3 hours and 55 minutes, whatever. I probably did that math wrong. You have that amount of time back to actually, go through the resumes yourself or find the candidates or whatever the case may be. So for anyone listening, I just want to emphasize, I think a lot of people have this conception in their head. They think about AI, they're like, it's going to take my job, or whatever, but it's more that it's kind of like an assistant, or if used properly, an assistant that works alongside you and helps make the mundane things even better. An example that I give that I use personally is like, if I'm going to make a LinkedIn post, there's a blog post out there and I really like it. I do not want to read through this entire blog post and try to come up with my own summarization of it to post it on LinkedIn. I'm going to do a horrible job. I'll put that into watsonx and ask it to essentially summarize a post for me, emojis, hashtags, boom, I'm done. And I can post it on LinkedIn in seconds. So I save myself time by doing that. But, there's still human interface or human interaction. Yeah. So went off a little tangent, but I just kind of want to mention that.
Yeah. And to that point a little bit, Josh, I think that some of it is fear of the unknown. Like we in HR, we're so big about PII and protecting data and information that maybe we're a little bit risk adverse when it comes to technologies like that. I tend to be more on the embrace it side. I think the big areas where technology can really assist us is in recruitment, learning and development, and performance management. Those are kind of like the three big buckets, and probably and this kind of gets into performance management, but the world of compensation, those are kind of the avenues where that type of technology can really aid us. And I'm starting to hear buzz about different companies experimenting more on letting the AIs of the world in-house to do some of the work that we need done.
And is that more like kind of similar to what I was saying? It's kind of trying to offload the more of those mundane tasks.
Yeah, and we should be doing that.
Yeah, and I could see it, like I said earlier, my wheels were turning. I could see it being used for sentiment analysis, pulling out those keywords, identify candidates. I mean, from that perspective, but so many different things. And I'll mention just because it all comes down to the use case, right? Like, what is the actual use case that can be implemented quickly and actually give you some kind of ROI? It's not just that this is the coolest thing I could think of, but what's something that actually gives the company value or gives the employees value. Something that happened internally at IBM. So we had, just like any company, we have HR, right? So we have, I don't even know how many people in HR. And, you think about the normal HR person, they're getting X amount of calls a day or chats a day asking probably the same questions over and over and over. What's the policy for blank? What's the, whatever. So we actually implemented Ask HR, which is a virtual assistant. You go out there and just chat with it in natural language and get your information back. But it can also take action. Like, I need to update XYZ, type it in. It's integrated with Workday, or, that's our system that we use. And it happened for you. You didn't have to go out to Workday. You're doing it all from there. Like, what's my paycheck? Here it is, all that stuff. And what we have seen is that, used to you had 100% of inquiries or questions going to some kind of representative. 94% of those now are going through the virtual assistant, and that's where it ends. They're handled there. Wow. So only 6% are, having to be escalated to the person. And that's the key too. If they need to be escalated, they need the other person. That's an option. Some places don't have that. It's like, you have the virtual assistant or nothing else, but that's key too, is they have that and the history that you whatever thing you're talking about, it comes over, so they're not left. They don't have to start. It's not like you have to repeat yourself and now have to say all this stuff all over again. So I just want to mention that as an interesting use case.
I think I love that use case, but I also want to say we have to think about context. And let me paint the picture. In IBM, that makes more sense to me. Where we were at in the past, Blue Cross, that makes more sense to me. Where I'm at now is so personally driven with human interaction. And I love that aspect because it produces such a vibrant, engaged, almost family-like culture. That's the positive. The negative is you don't want to tell me the answer. You gave me a number or some bot to engage with. What happened? They feel like there's something lost. And what it really boils down to is people have a tough time with change. So we have to think about the balance between that human aspect and being more productive and really being precise too. We didn't even say that aspect of it, but you're going to be far more precise if you're leveraging that tool. So finding that balance and that slow walk of making those types of individuals okay with what we're doing, that context is important.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to be respectful of your time. I know we scheduled this for a certain amount of time and we're approaching that. So I know you may have other things going on. So I definitely don't want to keep you, any longer than I have to. But I do have to ask one question. And then, of course, if it goes from there, it goes from there. But one question I have is, so let's just say that you are getting called into HR like a the Grim Reaper is now on the other side. Okay.
Yeah.
What did you do? Like, and this is a humorous question, not for, we're not admitting anything, but like, what's the thing that you did that now they're calling you into HR? From a humorous perspective, of course.
What did I do to end up in HR?
Yeah. Like, why are you getting the nasty gram?
If I'm being honest, I probably didn't think before I told a joke. It was probably like an inappropriate joke. If I were guessing, I mean, I hate to think, Josh, because in so many aspects of my life, I walk the line being in charge of HR that it's hard to even imagine being in there. I think if I walked in, I'd probably say, hey, listen, I don't know why I'm here, but I'm used to being in your seat. So let's have a relatable conversation. And I would probably try to take over the conversation just from being in that chair more than the chair that I'm in. Ooh, I think I started sweating when you said that.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that on your face. Yeah.
Oh,
I know. I had random questions that when I started this podcast, I wrote down that like just randomly throw out there. And that was one of them, but I saved that one for you. I haven't asked anyone else that question. I saved it for you. So, but everything else were ones I thought of specifically for you. So outside of the ones that I just randomly asked. So
if we go long, it's totally fine. I don't have anything scheduled after this. I will add this. A lot of people have a worry when it comes, and this is my PSA to support my HR people. A lot of people have this fear of going into HR, meeting with HR, and definitely closing the door in HR. Majority of my career, I've been focused on a couple things, but most importantly, making HR simple, meaning I'm not going to give you some convoluted, long legal garble about why we do what we do. Instead, I'm going to make it simple and relatable to you in the context on which you can understand. And secondly, I want to make our HR approachable and kind. I want you to feel like when you come to HR, it's okay to come to HR and it's not going to be for an issue. The one tool that I explained to a lot of people that is scary to most is a PIP, a performance improvement plan. A lot of people, when I mention that, they're like, oh, you mean the tool to get rid of people? No, that's not what it's for. It's designed to change behaviors. And I've often tried to change the context of what that means. And I'm very proud to say that a lot of places I've been, I've seen people successfully complete their PIP and continue their employment. And I love being able to say that because that means I was able to change a behavior and elicit the correct outcome. So that's my PSA for HR folks and for doing good and being secret superheroes.
No, I think that's great. I mean, and honestly, that's something that when I was at Blue Cross, you would hear about, oh, they're going on a PIP. It was always this extremely negative, kind of scary thing. It's like, well, you might as well go ahead and tell them bye. They're on their way out. They're on and I mean, and I know, and I can, immediately I can think of someone that I know who went on one and they're doing fine. They're still there. And that was a decade ago. So yeah, I agree with you completely. And I think it is important to call out, I feel like HR does get a bad rep in a lot of ways, but I don't, and I probably said some things, as I'm asking questions that probably sounded like that. So I apologize if I came, from that side. But obviously, HR there's a lot of parts to it. It's not all the person who tells you that you did the wrong thing, or the person says, why did you get drunk at the party and punch the person's face? That's not only what HR is doing. There's a lot of parts to it. Like you mentioned earlier, talent acquisition. There's parts around education, training. There's so many different avenues. So that'll actually lead me into a question. So let's just say someone does want to, they're like, they're coming out of college, or maybe they're in the middle of a career change. They say, I want to go into HR. What's your just general advice for that person?
Don't do it. No, usually I will tell people, I'll say, hey, have you considered data analytics? Because it's a great paying field and we need more people in it. That's usually what I say, only because I look at all jobs out there. Now, if somebody says, and they're sincere when they say, hey, I want to get into HR, the first thing I ask them, what do you want to do in HR? And if I hear them say, oh, well, I'm so good with people, I think I'd be really good at hiring. People love to talk to me. HR doesn't just talk to people and hire people. There's so many other aspects. One of the crazy things I used to do, Josh, is I would take students who said they want to work in HR to my office, and I won't tell what employer this is because I don't think I got approval to do this, but I did it anyways.
So this is why you got pulled into the office.
Hey, this would be why I got pulled into the office. There we go. That's a good answer. So I would say, let's look at candidates. If you're so engaged and feel so strongly that you'd be good at recruitment, here's the job description. Here's this 10 people. I'll give them 10. Here are these 10 individuals who applied to this job. Let's go through them. And we'll go through them and I'll say, okay, do you feel that this person qualifies for the job? And they'll say yes or no. And we'll get it down. We'll have 5 boxes clicked. Okay, so you're agreeing that these 5 people are not qualified for the job? Yes. Okay, go ahead and click that button. And they'll click the disposition button, not really knowing what it does because, this is a college student has never had exposure to an HRS system. So they click the button. I say, congratulations, you just told those 5 people they can't have a job here. And they're like, oh, what? The shock. And the reason I do it is I want them to understand brevity. I want them to understand how heavy such a simple decision it is, the click of a button. So I do that a lot of times with people that say they have an interest. And the rest of the time, if it's a working professional, I talk to them about pivoting. What skill set do you have that you think you bring to HR? And why do you want to do that? For example, if I find somebody that's a very engaging financial person, I tell them all the time, you could easily pivot into compensation. And it's an area that needs a lot of support and addressment because we're constantly reevaluating positions. We're constantly deciding that we need to retool and move people around, or maybe we're closing a location and moving people. Now we got to do some comp studies on cost of living changes and what salaries may be. So it's really about engaging people on why they want to be in HR, what's the background they bring. And if I can, once I hear that explanation, I give them some relatable stories as to what the experience is and more of a real picture to it. I'm the guy, I don't always get invited back to a college class after I do this, but so when I go into these colleges, I tell kids, hey, these are the things you're not learning in college that you need to learn quickly, like HRS and technology related to HR. And this is what you can expect to make. And they're like, that's not what my professor told me or my guidance counselor. I just want to be realistic and give realistic expectations. So that's usually what I do.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think there are a lot of situations where those kids, I mean, they need that, right? I mean, they need the, here is, if I'm going to go into this is exactly what I should expect. I mean, I think that's appropriate, but I can also understand why they may or may not necessarily want to invite you back. I mean, I'd invite you back. That's just me.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing okay on the invite back. So I guess I haven't been too bad lately.
Well, I guess we will, like I said, we'll go ahead and wrap this up, but I do want to give you an opportunity. I've asked pretty much all my questions, and I'm sure I could keep coming up with questions, and I always enjoy talking with you, but, I just want to give you an opportunity to hear anything that's just kind of closing thoughts, anything you want to say, anything we didn't cover. Just want to make sure you kind of have the open floor. Or if you have a random question for me, I'm happy to answer as well. The show's not about me, but if you have a random question that you're like, I want to ask that, then that's fine too.
Man, I could probably go all day, but I'll give this tidbit because even though I think this is dead, I keep seeing it come up every couple of months. People always ask, should I put the green banner on if I'm looking for a job on LinkedIn, or should I leave it off because I don't want to appear desperate? Put the green banner on. The reason I say that is because when recruiters go inside LinkedIn and they utilize their access, LinkedIn recruiter access that most of them have, there's literally a button that says open to work with green banner. They can click that. You instantly get shortlisted into the top of their feed. So I tell people all the time, if you're debating because you don't want to look desperate, but you're looking for work, click that and put the green banner on to let recruiters know that you're looking for a job. On the flip side, I'll also add, if you're worried about people within your own company seeing that you're looking, don't do it because they will be able to see it if they have LinkedIn recruiter access and they research people with their own company.
Yeah, and I was actually about to ask you about that as you were saying. So it also, because I feel like I saw this at one point, is there not a feature when you go change it to open to work that there's some kind of filtering where you can actually prevent people, it attempts to prevent people from your company from seeing it? I mean, I don't think it's guaranteeing it's 100%, but isn't there some way to do that?
They do try to have that filter, and I haven't had LinkedIn recruiter access in about a year now. So it could be something that they've developed even better. They are constantly retooling and working on their product portfolio, and they do a good job of retooling and having new options. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a better option than it was. But yeah, they do try to prevent that. But I'll be honest with you, I could see people in my own company, and I knew they were looking for other jobs, but I just try to be respectful as part of HR and not say, hey, I saw that you're on LinkedIn looking for a new job. Instead, it'd be more about engagement on how happy are you in your job? Is there anything we can do to improve, the work situations we have? Something along those lines.
Right. I mean, because to me, if someone is looking for a job, I mean, and I've experienced this. I was at Blue Cross for 14 years, and anytime I was like thinking like maybe I want to change, it's almost like a negative context. Like, well, why would you want to leave us? Like that's kind of the monologue that was playing in my head. But like you said, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe the person just needs a change within the company, and that's the way that they prompt that change within the company and find a new career path without leaving the company. But maybe it's better for that person to leave the company. I mean, the company will carry on without you. You're you're a cog in the wheel, but they'll find another cog in the wheel. I'm not saying you're not important, but if it's a great opportunity for someone to leave, I mean, I think someone should pursue it and not be afraid of putting that green banner up.
Yeah, I agree. And growth can happen outside. And some of my best hires are boomerang employees where they go and they grow in a different way and gain a different perspective, and they come back and they make an impactful difference.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. It has been fantastic. I know I've learned a lot, and I feel like anyone listening to this, especially someone who's maybe working on their resume today, or maybe they're interested in HR or anything like that, I think they're going to get a lot of good information out of this. So definitely appreciate you coming on here, and maybe we'll be able to have a part 2 sometime in the future.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for checking out this episode of CTRL ALT STORY. My name is Josh Spurgeon, and I'm a watsonx technical specialist at IBM. I can also be found under the name Data Nerd Josh on various social media platforms such as YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn.